Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's masterclass. Let's give it a few seconds for everyone to join in. I see the number of participants are increasing, so feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling in from. We would love to know. And indeed, we have a lot of people already connecting from the US, from Paris, Barcelona, Poland. So many people. That's great. A lot of Amsterdam people. I'm also located there. Great to see the representation. Let's give it a few more seconds before we get started. Hello, everyone. For those of you that are joining in right now, that are dialing in, I think we can get started. There's a lot of echo in my voice. Let me see if that's still the case. I hope it's better now. It's okay. I think the rest of the audience hears me fine, so perhaps it's a speaker's issue. But thanks for letting me know. I think we can get started with today's masterclass. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for connecting from all over the world, and thanks for joining the masterclass. The masterclass is, as you can see today, is turning complexity into clarity, the Fashion Impact Toolkit as a strategic navigator, and it's organized by GFA and Deloitte. This masterclass will focus on how the industry can navigate value chain complexities with the help of the Fashion Impact Toolkit. So if we can go to the next slide. My name is Camilla Morandi. I'm Impact Program Manager at Global Fashion Agenda, where I develop and lead impact programs for the industry. It's my pleasure to moderate this session today, which was developed by Deloitte and GFA, and just sharing a few housekeeping rules. As you can see, the chat is open, which is great to see. It's so active. You can share, of course, keep on sharing your where you're calling in from. Also, for you to know, we will open the Q&A section in the bottom below for you to drop in the questions for the speakers when the panel discussion is happening, so that we can really separate and have access to the questions for those that will speak. And the session will be recorded and it will be uploaded onto the GFA website. A few words about the Deloitte and GFA collaboration for those of you that don't know. This collaboration builds on the partnership that we have initiated last year with the development of the Fashion Impact Toolkit. This toolkit is developed to bring clarity to complexity, and also to support more informed and forward-looking decision-making across the textile value chain. If we look at today's agenda, in the masterclass of today, we will start with an introduction and a deep dive on the Fashion Impact Toolkit with GFA's Director of Impact, Cristina Iskov, and Deloitte's Sustainability and Circularity Partner, Cecilia Dall'Acqua, who led the development of the toolkit. Then we will jump into the panel discussion, where we will discuss the toolkit, the use cases for different industry actors, and overall topic of identifying impacts and prioritizing action with renowned industry expert that I'll introduce you very briefly. And finally, you will be able to share some of the questions that you have for the speakers via the Q&A button. And we will remind you also to use that button and the Q&A section to ask all the relevant questions. And then we'll finalize it, of course, with some closing remarks. During the panel discussion, we will welcome Mia Gunawan, Director of Environmental Sustainability at Puma, and Tobias Fischer, Head of Sustainability Governance, as panel speakers, of course, together with Cecilia and Christina from Deloitte and GFA. All of the speakers have contributed to the development of the Impact Toolkit, so it's going to be very interesting for you to also hear their perspective on it, and also their challenges in understanding impacts across complex global value chains and the value they see in a shared sector-wide framework for alignment and collaboration across the industry. So now I invite Christina to turn on her camera, and I'll pass it to her to share more about the collaboration between GFA and Deloitte.
Thank you so much, Camilla, and great to see so many participants for this masterclass. So welcome, everyone. My name is Christina Iskov. I am Director of Impact at Global Fashion Agenda, where I lead the Impact team and developing sustainability and impact programs alongside thought leadership publications. Besides that, and as you probably know, Global Fashion Agenda is a non-profit organization that drives sustainability in the fashion industry by fostering collaboration across the value chain. And we do this by mobilizing brands, manufacturers, policymakers, and other stakeholders through research, practical tools such as this Impact Toolkit, and platforms such as the Global Fashion Summit that actually takes place in only 2 weeks, but we'll touch upon that in the end of this session. Besides this, the session itself today marks the start of a broader collaboration with Deloitte aimed at equipping organizations with the tools and insights needed to navigate complexity, identifying impact hotspots, and unlock opportunities for innovation, circularity, and long-term competitiveness in a rapidly transforming industry. Along this path, and as Camilla, my colleague, has mentioned before, we walk hand in hand with a highly specialized team at Deloitte, led by Cecilia Dal Aqua, with whom we have collaborated for the past few years. Also, just a quick reminder again, you can already now and through the whole session put questions in the Q&A function and not in the general chat. So please do that if you have any questions for either of the speakers. I think besides that, we hope this session not only clarifies the purpose and structure of the toolkit, but also empowers you to rethink your products and value chain, uncover new opportunities for impact and innovation, and accelerate the transition towards a more resilient, future-ready business model. So with these words, I'd welcome Cecilia on camera. Over to you,
Hello.
Cecilia.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. My name is Cecilia Dalacqua, and I'm a partner at Sustainability and Climate at Deloitte, Spain. I'm specialized in consumer industry, but more specifically in fashion, and I'm the Deloitte Global Leader for Circular Economy Hub for Fashion. And most important, I lead the Deloitte Knowledge Partnership with the Global Fashion Agenda for already 1 year, as Christina and Camilla was explaining before. So we meet at a moment when the fashion sector is undergoing profound transformations. Companies are facing growing pressure to rethink how products are conceived, from material choices and design decisions to how circularity is embedded from the outset, besides navigating fragment data and limit visibility across complex supply chains. At the same time, expectations from consumers, investors, and regulators continue to rise, demanding not only transparency, but also tangible progress toward more resilient and future-ready business models. In this context, the need for clarity has never been greater. Clarity on where the impact truly occurs, what drives them across the whole value chain, and which decisions can unlock the greatest value through 3 specific drivers. The first one, value creation, through strategic decision-making and the introduction of new business models. The second, efficiency. What are the potential operation optimization and cost reduction that we can accomplish across the value chain? And third, resilience. through a better understanding of regulatory requirements and a greater value chain visibility. And that is exactly what brings us together today, to help you translate complexity into confident decision-making, enabling your organization to focus what are the sustainability strategies, where they matter the most, and accelerate meaningful and business-driven transformation. Last year, as Camila and Christina were explaining, we collaborated with GFA to develop the Fashion Impact Toolkit, a structured and intuitive resource created to help companies understand their impacts across the entire textile value chain. The toolkit consolidates a vast amount of research and sector knowledge from conversation with one of the most important fashion and sustainability experts from brands, manufacturers, and NGOs into an accessible and interactive tool that you can use to enable to explore more than 300 impacts and categorized by activities, materials, and geographies. So it's completely tailor-made for the reality and the context of each one of the companies that are here today. But most importantly, is designed as a strategic driver for all organizations, enabling you to translate complexity into confident, actionable decisions, aligning a common language across the value chain and build a shared foundation for more effective and scalable collaboration across the industry. In today's masterclass, we will walk you through in which way the toolkit can work, how you can navigate, and how it can use to support your own strategic decision-making. Today, our main goal is to identify true hotspots across the whole value chain, compare materials and production contexts, uncover inefficiencies and risks, explore potential circularity pathways if this is one of your strategies, and shape and prioritize sustainability actions. All of these through the development of conversation with stakeholders and peers. So I know this is a lot of information, but that's why we would like to walk you through a toolkit demonstration of how this could be used by you and your organization. Let's start with a specific example. Let's imagine we would like to guide you a small to medium fashion retailer through the toolkit. The company main material is cotton, which represents around 80% of its product mix, and the primary sourcing geography of the cotton is China. From a sustainability perspective, this company is facing a very typical challenge. Let's list 3 challenges that they may be facing. The first one, they want to increase transparency in their upstream supply chain, particularly in Tier 3 and Tier 4 suppliers. The second, they are looking to perform sustainability audits and verification on their cotton suppliers in a more focused and informed way. And the third one is that over time, they want to prioritize certain suppliers and gradually transition towards regenerative and recycling cotton alternatives. But they need to clarify on where to start. With this context in mind, let's have a look in the toolkit and how they can help you. Okay, so you can access the toolkit on Deloitte dedicated landing page. Right on top of the page, you will find the link to download the PDF version of the report. This report outlines the key findings from our impact inventory and presents a practical 7-step framework. This framework offers both quick wins and forward-looking strategy to support companies in the transformative journey of their collaboration in the industry. Heading back to the landing page, we see the textile value chain, which maps activities and sub-activities across the tiers from raw material productions all the way through the circular activities. The textile value chain also includes materials and waste flows. Because this company is a retailer, its own direct activities will be located at the retailer stage. However, since the company current focus is suppliers in Tier 3 and Tier 4, we won't click on retail at this stage. Instead, we move upstream to explore the cotton supply chain. To grasp what potential upstream impact looks like, we can check on the raw material production activity in Tier 4, then select cotton, which is the material of interest. And from there, we could go into farming, for instance. At each phase of the value chain, the toolkit automatically structures potential positive and negative impacts according to the ECRS framework and allow us to categorize both materials and geography, which is particularly relevant for this company given the resilience on cotton from China. At this level, the company can already gain useful insights from the list of possible impacts. One positive impact side, for example, we can see reference to regenerative agriculture practice, such as improved soil health or reduce emissions. On the negative social impact side, we can identify instances related to working conditions, labor rights, and community impact linked to cotton farming. This helps the company understand what kind of impact could be associated with cotton farming. Switching to circular activities, the company can take a forward-looking perspective by exploring closed-loop recycling cotton. Here, the toolkit allows us to navigate between different recycling paths: mechanical recycling, which sets environmental social consideration, and also chemical recycling, which brings different impact profiles with technology implications. This enables a company to compare potential future options, incorporating a better understanding of the associated impacts in their decision-making, and start thinking about how recycling cotton could realistically be integrated in their sourcing strategy over time. There are also some transversal impacts, which apply regardless of your position in the value chain, and independently of the material you work with and geographies you operate in. Through this exercise, the company is able to gain structural visibility across multiple tiers of the cotton supply chain, identify potential impacts hotspots that can contribute to informing verification and suppliers' prioritizations, compare current practice with future alternatives such as regenerative or recycling cotton, and ultimately move from general ambition to more focused sustainability action. This is exactly where Fashion Impact Toolkits adds value, helping your companies navigate the complexity and ask better questions to make more confident, evidence-based decisions across the value chain. Camila, thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, for this deep dive in the toolkit. I hope that it was a very useful demonstration for the many participants. I see also the chat is very active. Perhaps you may not have had the chance to already see the toolkit, so this was a great demo. And we would love to also hear more on how you use it, if you have used it. It's a free-to-use toolkit for everyone, and you can access it right away. Well, perhaps after the panel discussion. Now, moving to the panel discussion, I would like to welcome on the virtual stage all the different speakers. So we have Cecilia Dall'Acqua, Cristina Iskov, Mia Gunawan, and Tobias Fischer. You've already heard and you've been introduced by Cecilia and Cristina, so I'll just introduce you also very briefly to the other two speakers that have that we're welcoming on the stage. So first of all, introducing Mia to all of you. Mia Gunawan is the Director of Environmental Sustainability at Puma. She leads the environmental agenda across Puma's global supply chain with responsibility for climate, chemicals, water, biodiversity, and circularity. She leads sustainability implementation for regulatory compliance and alignment with environmental, social, and governance frameworks. So this is very relevant for what you see also in the toolkit. And today we're also joined by Tobias Fischer, who is Head of Sustainability Governance at H&M, and he has been regionally responsible for implementing H&M sustainability strategy at suppliers in several Asian countries. So we also have the hands-on experience, of course, from the supply chain that will be very interesting to hear more about. As briefly shared during the opening, each of the panelists today played a different and very important role in the development of the Fashion Impact Toolkit. So I would like to open the discussion with the first question to Mia on the motivation for the contribution to the development of the toolkit from your side and from Puma's side.
Yes, thank you, Camila, and thank you, GFA, for having us here today. We were very honored and happy to contribute to the development of the toolkit because, as perhaps a lot of people here can resonate, when we have to have our impact, risk, and opportunity assessment in order to create the foundation of our sustainability statement to fulfill the CSRD requirement, we have to look at it from a gross perspective, which is an industry-wide perspective, right? So it would really help that the industry has a common language and a common framework in the way we are looking at our impact, and then where the IRO basically. So this was one of our definitely our biggest motivation in doing that. And we saw that, of course, there are other brands who are taking part of it. And we see that, like, yes, there's definitely a lot of big player from the fashion industry, but also we see the need, particularly from Puma, because we're also a footwear brand, as a sports brand. We wanted to bring also that perspective from more of a footwear supply chain, right? Because sometimes it is not like the most loud voice out there. And then it's also like the less understood supply chain, I would say. There's different complexity, different depending on types of regions. So I thought like that was a good thing that for Puma to also share to the rest of the industry. And we're happy to see that when we have this toolkit, then we have perspective from different players of the industry that collectively brings this holistic knowledge about our entire industry together.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I think perhaps this is a great also segue to asking a very similar question to Tobias on both the motivation for contributing to the toolkit, and also perhaps if you've been using it, how you've been perceiving it, and how have you used it internally.
But I mean, it goes along, and first of all, thank you for having me. It goes along the same way as Mia. I mean, the better we can align as an industry, we will have a similar way of evaluating where do we have our hotspots. And then the next step will actually come, which connects to the due diligence regulations, which is coming our way as well, where we are working upstream. So it's very difficult to address some of the issues if we have the same view as Puma or other industry players. We can leverage and discuss and address these issues jointly or with other partners that we're working with. But I think one important part is also from a regulatory perspective, since I'm working with governance and Mia is working with compliance, so it's coming from the same background, we're spending a lot of time to identify our impacts and risks. And we can do that forever and ever and ever. In reality, they don't change too much from year to year, so it's better time spent to actually work on the mitigation efforts or at times remediations. So I think this is what the tool can help us with, to have a common understanding where do we have actually our impacts and risk along our value chain. And if we have a common understanding within the industry, then we will not spend too much time on identifying, or rather on how to deal with these impacts and risks. That said, since I also have Deloitte in the room as well, I know very well we are responsible for our own due diligence, our own value chain mapping, but this is obviously good guidance, and then we can benchmark this. So this is how we are using this. We, of course, do our own value chain assessment, we do our own due diligence, we can look at our own IROs and do it correspond. Is it similar or the same? And if we see something else in the tool, then we maybe need to come back and reevaluate our own work and so forth. But of course, we know our value chain the best, and if we have a difference, there are maybe good reasons for that, because in the end of the day, every business is to some extent unique, even though if we're very similar. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Tobias. And indeed, I think you both you and Mia spoke on the very importance of the toolkit, speaking to different types of businesses and different also value chain actors. So that was also seen in the demo that Cecilia provided on selecting the right type of part of the value chain. So perhaps this is also words of encouragement for all the participants to use it and to see also where you're located and what kind of impacts could come out. I would like to go back to Mia for a question that really takes into consideration the fact that, of course, both Puma, but also, of course also H&M have a very robust sustainability system in terms of both reporting and also setting the strategy. So you've collaborated on this piece of work that is meant for the whole industry to be used. How do you think the toolkit can be leveraged to support other industry actors in their sustainability transition?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Camilla. Well, first of all, we are operating on a common industry, right? I think a lot of the players are the same players over and over, and it's a shared value chain that we have across like both textile and also leather or other materials. It's more or less a shared supply chain. So it really is something that is important for us to have a common, again, like a common framework that we can bring to multiple actors within the supply chain, right? We can also talk about this with the supplier, so we can show it as a proof of concept, like, hey guys, look, that it is right? Like you are one of the hotspot, for example, and we can show like, that this is not just according to Puma, but like, according to the industry, here are the hotspots, here are the impacts, and this is like what we can do about it. So it's also makes our agenda more believable and trustworthy, right? When we bring it to suppliers and also to our internal stakeholder as well, that we said that like this is something that the whole industry believes in, and it's not like a company specific assessment, as to say.
Thank you, Mia. And indeed, perhaps it's also very interesting to add that the impacts that you will find are both positive and negative. So not only the toolkit can be used as this is the hotspot for negative, which perhaps is something that the industry has seen a lot, but also this is a hotspot for positive impact. Of course, I'm just reading from your answer. I would like to ask a question to Cecilia from Deloitte on how can companies really use the toolkit into day-to-day decision making rather than treating it as a one-off sustainability exercise. What have you seen with your clients?
Yes, and I think thank you, Tobias and Mia, for sharing your view on the toolkit, and to build on what they were already sharing, right? The toolkit is conceived in the company agnostic guide, right? That can serve any size and any subsector of the fashion industry, which means that the first step to really embed it into the day-to-day operations is to know how the impact can be adapted to reflect your own reality, as Tobias was saying, right? Adapt the value chain, adapt the activities, the type of materials that you're using. And this will allow you to really undergo and understand have a picture of where you stand as a company. The second step is to use this as a reference point, okay? So the toolkit can contribute to build the foundation for internal conversations on a company sustainability strategy. So for example, to bring this to the different executive teams or to the different business teams to really share the understanding of where you stand and how to address the impacts and the challenges of the organization. The toolkit really can be embedded into existing process, such as product development reviews, sourcing discussions, or even suppliers engagement planning. And finally, this is not one shot exercise, right? This can be revisited periodically. So companies can use the toolkit as a living reference, returning to it as strategies evolve, new materials are explored, new regulations are coming, or even, for example, if new business models are going to the market, such as, for example, secondhand or using different material choices. So I think, first of all, understand how to adapt the toolkit. The second one is bring this to business conversations, and finally, use whenever that is needed.
Thank you, Cecilia. Um, I would like to go back to a point that came up both during the presentation of the toolkit, so the creation of why the toolkit was created in the first place, and also something that Mia and Tobias also mentioned in their introduction and in their roles, and bringing the context on the table of the complexity of the regulatory landscape. We understand that it has been a very challenging last few years in terms of this landscape and also companies navigating it. And I would like to ask Tobias on what can the companies do to structure and bring clarity on where to focus first in the value chain.
So we launched our report a month ago, roughly. So we're still suffering from post-traumatic stress of doing our first annual sustainability report according to CSRD, and trying to set the direction. We're waiting for Omnibus coming out and Triple D. That said, no, but I mean, I think any kind of, and I wouldn't call it a simplification, I would call it more a common approach from the industry will make this work easier. All the tools that we can help, that we can move faster to take the right decisions, that this tool has been developed by the industry itself, together with an assurance company. I mean, the Big Fours, I mean, all the big companies are working with the Big Fours for the assurance of our reports, and also consulting them at different times when we need to do interpretations of the laws. The laws are not always clear. We are all trying to find our way. Having these kind of tools, this is not the only one. There are other organizations developing also similar kind of tools, or not similar, but additional tools for other purposes along this value chain. The easier it will become for the companies to actually do the reporting requirement. Because the apprehension from the industry and from many was that with all these laws, with all the resources that previously been put into actually mitigate and work with our supply chain, go into what you could call bureaucratic governance work, making your house in order and report on it. And you're taking that resources from working actually with and addressing the issues. So I'm coming back to my main point. I think this is good to make it easier. You spend less time on things that becoming repetitive, because we're going to do this over and over for each year. We need to fine tune it. But from my background, when I've been working with the industry for so many years, the difference that I can make and my organization can do is actually to engage with different players in the supply chain and try to mitigate and remedy the issues that we know exist along our value chain. The other parts I would like to say is also it can give you and help you to set your priorities, because all the laws are talking about the risk-based approach. No one is expecting to fix everything at once, but set things in order. Try to chunk the elephant and eat it piece by piece. This is what the tool can help you with as well. But you need to do some homework as well, because this is generic. Each and everyone have their own supply chain, depending on what products, what materials, what geographies you're working on. So that's the homework you can do. But this will give you the guidance that you need. So I think it's very, very good and very, very helpful, especially for companies that hasn't been coming as far necessarily as we have done, since we have been forced to start with these regulations fairly early due to our size.
Thanks, Tobias, and great to hear. Everybody, I'm sure in the comments love homeworks, and I think this is necessary evil that we need to all do to then move to the action part of sustainability. And I'm curious to ask a similar question to Cecilia from Deloitte's perspective. What can companies do to structure and bring clarity on where to focus first in their value chain?
Yes, and I'm going to build on what Tobias was sharing, right? Because I think using the toolkit to really map the impact from the raw material to the circular activities, company can really move away from all these fragmented responses that brings from different regulations and connect and connect all the different, let me say, compliance requirements that needs to have one unique answer. We are seeing like different sources of regulations, right? And when you know and you have designed the whole value chain, you can understand how to connect each one and give one answer to different regulations that are upcoming. This is the first one. The second one is it really, when we see as an impact-based structures, helps the sustainability, the legal, the sourcing, the product teams to really align and act according to what are the complexity and what are the internal frictions that can cause, right? Because as I was saying, it's all interconnected. So when a regulations comes to eco design, this will affect the sourcing team, but it also is going to affect the different business models on the design, on how you are going to incorporate or how you are going to include the end of life of this product. So how can you bring all the different teams aligned to comply with these requirements? And finally, this really treat regulation as a consequence and not a starting point. Okay, so what we have seen is, I agree with you, is a necessary evil, but actually is a starting point from our point of view, right? It can really bring companies to focus on what are their most relevant impacts and embed this into their strategy and into their decision making. They are typically better positioned to respond to the current and future regulation requirements if they know what is happening and they can take more efficient and confident decision making based on the toolkit. So I think the toolkit really, I agree with Tobias, it can help you comply, but for us it's most important is it can help you think strategically on how to prioritize all the upcoming requirements that are coming.
Thank you, Cecilia, so much for this answer. I think you really completed Tobias' answer. And I would like to move to Christina from GFA. Looking at the future of the industry, what kind of change or action do you hope that this toolkit brings for the industry?
No, thank you so much, Camilla. I mean, in general, I think I want to acknowledge a lot of the points that the other speakers has mentioned. It is a starting point for the industry, or it can be, and it is homework, but we need to do it. And I have a couple of points, but before that, I was also thinking for the attendees online, it would be great to understand in the chat what's holding you back from using the toolkit. If you haven't used it, if you already knew it, would be quite interesting to understand that. Besides that, I want to just explore or tell that it is good with a tool that can create a common reference. So a point to align priorities and enhance cooperation. I think that's crucial. Also, the opportunity of minimizing the negative impacts that the industry is having across the value chain is quite important. But most importantly and excitingly, focusing on the net positive impacts that the industry can have on planet, people, and resources. And back to your question, Camilla, that is, of course, as GFA's mission is focusing on a net positive fashion industry, that is our core goal, even though there's a long way. But this toolkit can support getting us in that way. And I think another thing could be that an example would be scaling up the circular value chain operations would offer great opportunity for positive change in the industry. So yeah, I think in general, better alignment for the industry would really be a focus. So where do we have our hotspots? But of course, it's individually per company, as we can also hear from both Tobias, Mia, and Cecilia, who made the toolkit together with us. But most importantly, it's just about starting. So again, for attendees, it would be great to understand the limits of using the toolkit.
Indeed, thank you so much, Christina. Indeed, great call to also put in the chat if you've been using the toolkit, what have been your feedback or the things that you've noticed when using it, and also please use the Q&A function for putting in the questions for the speakers. In a few minutes, we'll move towards the Q&A section, so we are gathering all the questions there. I'd like to go back to Mia now to talk a little bit more about the prioritization of impacts across the value chain, and how have you approached prioritizing the impacts in your sustainability strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Camilla. And I think like this question is particularly important for like these days, right? I mean, in a tough economic setup, and then also like the geopolitical uncertainties, like of course, sustainability is something that is competing with other priorities within the company, right? So whenever we bring some initiative internally, it's always the first question is like, how are the others doing it? Is this like our own thinking, or is this something that's validated within the industry? So immediately it helps the conversation when we say, yes, this is like things that we see across the industry. We're not the only one that are championing these initiative or like seeing this like risk or impact in the hotspot. So like both of them, right, from positive and negative, these are really helpful in the conversation because it brings a validation in terms of an industry-wide setting so that we can influence our internal stakeholder, whoever that may be, like whether it's design, whether it's fellow sourcing leaders or, sales or other types, and or the management, to say that like these initiative or like these thought process are something that the industry came up together. And then this is answering to the same like regulatory perspective. In this case, we of course refers to ESRS because we are a European company. And that is a really strong validation. And, it's not only a proof of concept, but it's almost like, if we have these kind of validation and industry-wide validation, then it really serves as the foundation of like going through the next step in terms of decision making. So I think it has been like very important in terms of how we prioritize things, because this is basically how, with the limited resources and like conflicting priorities in like tough situation, we of course needs to prioritize, right? And then like having these guideline or an industry framework as a reference, serves us to kind of like prove that like this prioritization, what we have proposed, is actually a correct one to do.
Thanks, Mia. I wonder if Tobias also has his own perspective on this question, on how you prioritize impacts across the value chain whenever you're looking at the sustainability strategy, if with or without the toolkit as a reference point, just because we know that it's really complex to digest so much potential impacts that a company can have.
I think that the toolkit is helping us to confirm that we have the right priorities. Then the DMA in itself is an exercise in itself where you need to look at, okay, and there I think we don't get any guidance more than that we should evaluate and have a system. And then we're coming into another very technical area. So how do you assess the impact on people and environment? And then you're coming into another framework, which is more on the UNGPs and OECD. And then you have to do your financial impact, and then you're basically coming into your enterprise risk management system, and how do you align that? I will not go into these technicalities, but I think for me, this is helping to ensure that we're having the right impacts, risks, and opportunity in the first place, and that we can cater for and have substance behind that. I can feel more confident in what we're doing. Then it's how we bake it and come out with our priorities. That's something that we need to motivate and argue for. And then we will have a conversation internally, of course. And then we will have a conversation for us as a public listed company, which is under the CSRD. Of course, have a conversation with the assurance company as well on how we have done that. And it's been an interesting journey to learn on how do you need to motivate all this. So the priority, I think the tool is still really a backbone for us to do these exercises and feel more confident in the work. So I'm coming back to that. You can't delegate it by using this tool. The tool will support you and guide you, but you still need to do your own work. But the more support you're getting, the better it is.
Yeah, and maybe perhaps a follow-up question for you, Tobias, on what you talked about in terms of the internal discussions and internal conversations that you've been having for setting the strategy. How does understanding better your impact also help with this internal alignment? How does it work for H&M? I know you have a huge team and different departments for sustainability. Is there anything that you can suggest in terms of how to best bring this internally?
Patience.
Yes.
I think it's a lot of patience, a lot of learnings. I think it's going to be, it is, I wouldn't say tough, but it's a learning. We partly put it like this. Nothing in our priorities on what we're working has dramatically changed our way of working because we have new regulations when it comes to CSRD or that Triple D is coming along our way. It's more to put your house in order and doing certain things in order and continue with that work. So nothing dramatically has changed in our priorities since before. So we still have a strong climate agenda. We still have a strong water agenda. We're still working with our social impacts. What we might see is that we need to work further upstreams that we're coming to position and the reasoning behind that, partly due to identify where do we actually have our biggest negative impact, not so much opportunities, unfortunately. So that's maybe where I could see that this whole framework, where this is a tool, have changed our view on how we're looking into our value chain. And then it's both upstream and downstream. If that's coming through the regulation or if it's coming in the nature of business, if it's coming from the different stakeholders, I have a hard time to judge. Most likely it's a combination of both, different forces working at the same time.
Yeah.
But the conversation internally, I think they should stay internally for the time being. I will come back next year.
Yes, we will. We'll definitely do so. We're approaching the Q&A part of the discussion today, so feel free to continue putting the questions in the Q&A. I have actually a question from one of our audience member that asks Deloitte, so Cecilia. They see that the toolkit provides a lot of information. We've seen it also in the demo. How do you recommend using the toolkit, practically speaking?
So I think you first need to understand the value chain, right? So use the value chain as a blueprint for you, and start mapping from the activities and sub-activities, which ones that really applies to your reality. When you have adapt this value chain to your company, start understanding which ones of the impacts there is both positive and negative, and start challenging and having conversations with the different business and managers from the company, such as procurement, legal, product design, to understand what are their strategic imperatives and cross-reference between this, right? So what are the impacts that we are foreseeing the industry with your strategic imperatives in the company? And when you cross this, you can see the blind spots that you have not considered in your strategic imperatives, and even reprioritize this. And finally, by using this, you can really bring this back to your own strategy, right? And make specific adjustments to where you want to be in the next steps. This is when you are using this as a strategic tool for your strategic reflection. However, as Tobias was saying before, this also can use as a baseline for your double materiality analysis, right? So as you know, in the double materiality, to comply with the ESRS reporting, what you need to do is understand your value chain, understand your impacts, but then the next step is to identify your own company risks and opportunities. The impacts are external, right? It's an industry point of view, and this is what the toolkit gives you. The next step is, now we need to understand from our process, from our activities, from our sub-activities and our materials that we are using, what are the risks and opportunities that we are facing, and then identify what we call the IROs and the data points that you need to report, right? So it depends for what you want to use the toolkit. You can follow one strategic analysis or one compliance and reporting analysis. It can be used in both ways depending on your own goal.
Thank you, Cecilia. I hope that this answered the question. I have a question for Tobias, which is, well, we have a very specific question, which perhaps is not really speaking to H&M's way of using the toolkit, but I would like to kind of enlarge it and ask really, how have you been using the toolkit? How have you been, like, what kind of selection have you been doing for the toolkit? So what kind of materials have you explored? Have you also used the part of the circularity the circular value chain in the toolkit, and just providing a little bit more insights on how have you selected the functionalities internally?
So I should be very transparent here. So we developed this tool during the last spring, right? 1 year ago. That was also during the same time where we were trying to get a bit late getting our head around how to actually do the reporting. So I mean, it was a mist of everything. And I see maybe rather like this, I will put it like this. We have missed opportunities to use the tool during last year's reporting. And we're looking right now into how we can use the tool to benchmark what we have already done. Now we have the foundation of a report. Now we need to see where can we actually improve. Is there anything we have missed? Is there something? And that's more the process I'm seeing how to use it right now. Actually go back to our current report that we just published and go back. Did we miss something? Is there something that we need to improve? Obviously, Mia, we've also been skimming your report, and we've been skimming other competitors' reports. So that's, of course, as Mia was mentioning before, you're benchmarking to try to find that. And what we can see, and this is maybe how we see this reporting landscape. Now we're coming from different directions, working with different consultancy companies. Over a couple of years, I think these reports that were coming from our industry is going to look more and more the same. Our performance is going to maybe differ, because that's where we're going to see, because we're going to address the problems. But what we're addressing is going to be more and more the same over the years. And I think that's a natural development. And that's hopefully then also coming back to my main point. The winners, or the ones performing the best, are the ones who are actually putting less time into trying to identify your IROs and making the most beautiful DMA and packaging into the report, but the ones who actually can put the resources in to address the issues in the long run, or working with colleagues within the business to address it jointly, depending on the nature of the problem.
Yeah.
So to Camilla, I will actually, and that was the meeting I had earlier today, to say, okay, now let's go back to this tool and start to revisit that and see how we can use it for this year's report. So we are starting.
Thank you
Maybe
very
can I
much.
add to that as
Yes.
well? So, I mean, when we started with the CSRD, the first like CSRD compliant report that we have was for the 2024 reporting year. And at that time, this toolkit was not yet available, right? And it was very hard as a guessing game. You know, it's like literally us like calling like other brands, hey, you guys, like, do you have like the same IRO as us? You know, it's like trying to compare notes with each other. And that was, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort to do so. And maybe not everyone is okay to share 100% the truth, right? And I mean, we are competitors after all. So having this toolkit now in our pocket kind of like really leverage like the work that we do, because every year we also have to revalidate our IRO, right? The IRO are not static. You have to again say like, yes, this is again, we confirm this is still the same IRO, and then etc., like things like that. So I think like moving forward, this will enable us to move faster, right? We don't have to like spend so much time doing that, and then like it just bring much more credibility to our work.
Thank you so much, and thank you all so much. We're really getting close to the end of this masterclass. I really want to thank you for these great points that you've raised, and also for the active participation from the chat. We've seen a lot of comments coming in, so if we haven't answered your question, feel free to email us. You'll see soon also an email coming up. As we heard from the panel discussion, we really, really encourage you all to use the toolkit, do your homework, and also use it as a shortcut for industry collaboration. This is really something that we've built together with industry experts and using all the different sources, the latest sources that we have found. So it's really important that also it goes back to the industry and it gets used. So as a couple of reminders, in very short days, in a couple of weeks, we have the Global Fashion Summit in Copenhagen coming up. So we would love to see you there. If this session was interesting for you, we're also happy to share that we will be hosting an in-person interactive workshop with Deloitte at the Fashion Summit. So we will further look at how the toolkit can support the industry in their journey towards a resilient future. You can also register via the QR code and look at the theme of this year's summit and learn more about the speakers. So we're really looking forward to seeing you there. And then as a last remark, we will be following up with a recording of this masterclass. It will go up on GFA's website, and you will also receive it over email. With that said, I want to thank you all again, speakers and participants, for this great masterclass, and we hope to hear from you soon. And please feel free to share your feedback regarding your use of the Fashion Impact Toolkit. Thank you all, and I wish you a great rest of the day.